about the ride experience. So, what is your most dangerous experience in your life, cycling life?
Okay, yes, we talked about this a little bit before, trying to decide which one we are dangerous guys. If you haven't noticed, we are dangerous. Look out.
You are dangerous.
Yeah. We decided on this one when we were starting with some friends, this Yonder journey.
We've had a lot. We've had many together.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should tell a story that we
Yeah.
experienced together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because most of them are together. We travel a lot together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And ride.
Yeah. This one was about 7 or 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a route that went from the how do those coasts work?
Houghton's is the name of the range.
It's a south coast and or is it east and west coast?
It's near Wanaka, this small town.
Well, we had to go over the island. So it was traversing the entire island. I don't remember the orientation of the island. I can't remember to know what coast, but went over the island. And so in order to get over the island, New Zealand is very compact and has very steep features. And so it was a 5-day trip, I believe, with for this now defunct blog Yonder Journal. And a bunch of us went on it, and it was all planned out. And it was probably about four days of riding through some really beautiful, unbelievable countryside. And you go through all these different zones, and we went up and over big mountains and down mountains and through the snow, through 50 degrees Celsius heat, after being in the snow,
Yeah, you would have one day would be just so exposed and just roasting because there's no ozone layer down there. So you get so much sun exposure. And then by the end of the day, you'd be up high in the mountains, and it would just be, the weather would just change like that. And it would be crazy, crazy hard wind and snow and ice. And the second to last day we should say
what the ultimate plan was, if this had all gone well, is we knew that we were ending with somebody helicoptering in a whitewater raft. At the end,
this trip was organized for the group. We didn't plan this.
we
don't have
along.
access to helicopters.
Yeah, we tagged along. Yeah, So they were going to drop a helicopter, which apparently are very common in New Zealand. Yeah. They were going to drop a raft and leave it there for us. So a few days earlier, and so we were going to go up and over this final mountain, which was the biggest of them all. Yeah. And we were going to go down the other side and raft out to the coast. And so, even if that had gone well, it would have been stupid.
It would have been crazy. Yeah. So the plan for the second to last day was this river valley that went up to the mountains. And we woke up at 4 a.m. because it looked like the weather was changing. And the trail was basically an unmarked, a very sparsely marked single track trail on the map. It looked like it would be doable. And it kind of went steadily up this river valley. And when we started at 4 a.m., basically we knew that we were going to be crossing the river a bunch of times.
It was already drizzling,
It was already starting to rain at 4. We got up early to try to beat the rain. And the river was a really narrow little stream that you could walk across very easily.
We knew we were going to have to walk it. We took our pedals off.
We started hiking up very early, and you're kind of just carrying bikes fully loaded with all your stuff. Yeah. And we hiked for about 9 hours, and the rain just got heavier and heavier, and the water, as we got higher, started rising. Yeah. So we were crossing. At the beginning, you were walking across, and we just as the day went on, it got to here.
Yeah, you're holding your frame bag is resting on your head. And you're just holding your bike. And you're like, why am I going further? Because you're following.
You're just kind of going.
You're just going.
You're like, we got to do this.
Everyone's there. It's like a group mentality. And you're like, not going to turn back.
And it wasn't like a trail at that point. It was kind of like scrambling over boulders, like giant rocks. And you would cross over, and you would hand your bike up to somebody who had climbed up, and they would be.
It's a broken bone like that if something went wrong, And then
So we went really deep, 9 hours in. And we came we were getting kind of nervous, but you're also so tired that you're not thinking straight. And the temperature had dropped and dropped and dropped. It got colder and colder. And we were totally soaked.
Yeah, we knew we couldn't stop too, because we knew if we stopped, hypothermia would happen.
So you have to keep moving.
Keep moving, soaking wet.
And I think at a certain point you get to a place where you think it's so hard what we've already done. It's got to get easier, and it can't be. There's nothing that can be as hard as that up there.
And there's a hut system in New Zealand, so they helicopter in these old. They used to be like railroad stops in the countryside,
in the backcountry.
And so they helicopter them up, and they become like little backcountry huts that
for hunters, indigenous hunters, and hikers and stuff.
So we knew one of those was up there, so we just needed to get. If we got to that hut, everything was going to be okay. We could start a fire.
Wood stove in there.
Yeah.
And so right when we're, on the map, we're just right around the corner from it. We get to this river crossing the river is just raging. It's going, I guess there's a bunch of snow melt and the rain.
Yeah.
And one guy in our group who was in the very front just charged into the water because it's what we've been doing. And we watched him get swept down the river. Like he went underwater and was gone, and his bike, you could just see it tumble down the river.
Really? He had big panniers. It just was like
it just took him down, and we didn't see. He was disappeared under the brown water that was just and we were like,
oh my God.
And then it really hit me like, oh, the wind is howling so hard. It is so windy, and it was very cold. It was very, very cold. We were soaked. Everything we had was wet. And we watched where he should be, and we watched him basically crawl out on the other side, and he had managed to hold on to like one wheel of his bike.
Wow.
And it was insane that he made it out.
It was insane.
It was I think.
But it was.
So we watched him, and then it was very clear nobody else was going to go there.
No way. No.
So we were just like, we cannot, there's no way anybody else is going. And then also like, what are we going to do? To get him back, what are we going to do? And so within a minute, we were just shivering, and it was a kind of shivering that was so, your whole body shakes, and you know that you only have a few more minutes of like thinking clearly. And luckily, and there was no real tree cover, and the bushes were really dense, thorny bushes, so there was no cover. So luckily, he said, it was your idea. I was already like delirious. Like I couldn't even think straight.
So we got to bivvy down.
We gotta get
tarps. Get out your tarps.
So we pulled out a big tarp and just got underneath it.
Get in your sleeping bag, even though it's kind of wet. Just get out of your wet clothes into something dry.
So we got naked, fully naked. Took all our wet clothes off and got in our sleeping bags. And our sleeping bags were kind of wet, but it was enough insulation. And then we started like camp stoves and just made hot tea in there as fast as we could and just drank hot tea. And it took like an hour to stop shivering. Like we were in there for like an hour.
I fell asleep. Luckily, this was like in the summertime in New Zealand, so the daylight lasts well into the night. And so we're just getting warm, and you could kind of see we fall asleep, wake up, and it's starting to get sunny out. And the storm had passed, and we took all the layers off, and like, oh, it's beautiful. And then we see our friend who had crossed, and he had made it to the hut.
Oh, he did.
And there were two people inside it, like on their like honeymoon. And he like pounded on the door, let me in. and
they had a fire going.
They had a fire going for him, and so he comes, and then the creek like
it just washed all down,
just like completely, and it was like tranquil and like this beautiful scene like that you see in Disney movies. And we hopped across, but just as we were hopping across, you could see the skies graying again, and it started to rain again, of course. But we got into the hut, we survived and everything, and so now we're like, well, oh my God, what now? Because the next
we hadn't even gotten to like the mountain climb.
The top of the mountain. we still had so much to go.
Oh my God.
And so we were all kind of like, not like bickering, but infighting a little bit. Do we keep going or like what? We had our guide then reveals that he has a satellite phone, and he could call in a helicopter at any moment. So we're like, no, not yet. And then we're talking more to the person who had set up the trip. Well, we were like, how do we know that that the raft is? He also reveals that there's no trail down the other side of the mountain to where we would pick up the raft.
So basically, what we're saying is these are some of our closest friends that plan this trip, but don't ever go on a trip with them. That's what we're getting at.
Or really, ask for more details.
Yeah.
Ask more details.
And so we're, they're all figuring this out, and we decide to not try and hike a bike down the other side through this like thick brush to a raft that we may or may not be able to find. Whatever. That was out of my mind. We're like, get that helicopter or get us out of here, because we can't go back down what we just went up. It's all washed out.
Yeah.
It's starting to rain again. It's still flooding.
And we were like really beat up.
Oh my
like
God.
We've been dragging bikes for hours. It took a few days to kind of recover from that. I think it was one of the hardest I've ever gone.
Deepest I've ever been.
Deepest I've ever gone.
Yeah. Well, the next
we
go
very, very tired.
We went to sleep that night. Lo and behold, the next day, there comes the helicopter and attaches all 6 of our bikes to the side and lifts us out of there. And it's like Lord of the Rings, like going through, the New Zealand Alps, the Southern Alps, this beautiful landscape. And we're in a half an hour, we're back in like a city.
It was so crazy. And that's really common there. They use these helicopters to take mountain bikers all over and drop them off to ride trail. So they have these crazy bike racks that fold out from the helicopters that can hold like 8 bikes. It's like they fold down on either side.
Unreal. And so
so we got our first helicopter ride together.
I think the best part of this story is that we get back to civilization, and the lead guy in our group calls the helicopter guy that was supposed to drop the raft off, and he can't get a hold of him. So he's like, okay, well, I guess we'll figure out that they're going to pick that raft up somehow or whatever. Well, a week later, he gets the call back from the guy, and the guy had been in the States at a wedding. He had the months mixed up. So even if we had gotten all the way down the other side of that mountain, there would have been no raft.